All right, Reid, here we are. Thank you so much
Yeah.
for being here. I
Hey,
appreciate
man.
it.
It's awesome to hang out with you on the podcast.
Yeah, I'm thrilled for you to be here. We've gone back a while. I know who you are, but why don't you take a moment and give the audience, those maybe few that don't know who you are, why don't you give yourself a nice little bio?
Sure. Yeah, I remember we go back way back with your SVN days. So I started in commercial real estate selling apartment buildings in the neighborhoods of Chicago in 2001. I had a certain section that I was working on. That's a long time ago in the space. And I initially started selling to the only people that were buying apartment buildings in Chicago were condo converters at that time. And I truly believed when I started the business that I was going to sell myself out of a business because I really believed every single apartment building and complex in the country was going to be converted to condos
Hmm.
just because I was so young and involved in that. So it started selling to condo converters. I didn't even know how to run a P&L statement. We didn't even care about rent rolls. It was all about square footages or the size of the units.
Yeah.
And then when the tides started turning in 2007 was like the last really hot condo market here, I started to figure out that apartment buildings actually cash flowed and you had to understand how to understand that. So I got my CCIM, which we both share that as well. And from there, we had to, I started moving into the suburban markets, working on larger apartment deals. And at that time, I was just part of a small dinosaur boutique firm. And I actually lost a particular deal. It was 100 units. It was 50 units split by the expressway in Northwest Indiana that one of the clients that I had said, I know you track every single apartment building in Illinois and Indiana. Do you know the owner of this? I said, yes, I know the owner of that. And I drove out and met with him and asked him what he wanted. And he told me he wanted 50,000 a door, so $5 million. And I brought him a 4,950,000 offer. And he said that he looked at his management agreement as because he syndicated it. It stated that he had to list it with a nationally recognized firm. From there, I tried to figure out what national firm to get into that I didn't have to change a lot of things, and SVN was one of those firms. So we ended up buying into the franchise in 2008, which was a great year to start doing that.
Yeah.
So we ramped up with that company with SVN, and in 2013, I became the national council chair for multifamily and we work on deals. My team, particularly here in Illinois, Iowa, a little bit in Indiana, mostly in the Midwest, and then I partner up with a lot of people in the council to work a number of different states around the country. That's where we are today.
Yeah. That's awesome. I don't think I've ever heard your full story, so thank you for sharing that.
Oh, that's only part of it, man.
Yeah. So I'm curious about the condo conversion aspect of the business when you first got started,
Sure.
especially because like right now it seems you can't build condos. You can't get financing for them, nothing. They're completely
No.
out of vogue.
Yeah.
So,
Which is interesting because, as you well know, the reason why the metrics in multifamily are so robust, one of the major reasons is there's not a mass exodus like there was in 2008, 9, and 10. Actually, it was more 2006 and 7. If anybody that had a pulse could get a mortgage to leave an apartment to go buy a home they couldn't afford. This is not the instance in this current market that we found ourselves in 2024,
I
where,
think you just posted something, right? About
yeah,
the mortgage prices versus rental rates, and
yes,
mortgages are way up
it's
here and
flipped
rental rates are
completely.
here.
Yeah, exactly. So it's a lot more costly to own a home right now than it is to rent. And this is even after 3 years of double-digit percentage increases that we've seen in a lot of the markets. But it's still cheaper to rent because of the fact that a lot of the homeowners are sitting with a 30-year fixed 2.7% interest rate they can't get out of. It's like rent control. So they're not leaving their home, they're not putting it on the market. So the inventory is squished down to virtually nothing, which is interesting that you brought up the condos because now would be a fantastic time if a developer were to switch like a rental product over to a condominium product because of the inventory constraints that we have, at least here in Chicago. I don't know what it would be like in a lot of the other markets, but If you put on a condo product right now, as long as it wasn't $1,000 a square foot, you probably could sell out.
There's a market for everything, right?
True.
We're seeing rental rates. I remember somebody, when I first got started here in Cincinnati, somebody was like, rents will never break $1 a foot.
Yep.
And now we're here in town, like $3 a foot. I was looking at a deal outside of Ann Arbor, and they're performing like $4 a foot. I was like, what?
Insane. That's what we called San Francisco prices when we years ago, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy. All right, let's think a little bit more. So you got in, you're afraid you were going to sell everything out, but that actually didn't happen because
No.
there was not full absorption of the inventory. I'm curious actually, let's finish the story and then we can go back and then maybe pick it apart. So
Sure.
2013, you became council chair. That's probably about the time you and I probably met in 2011, right?
Yeah.
I feel like that's right.
Yeah. I want to say, yeah, that sounds about right, because we were in, I think, San Diego when you came up to talk about, I think we were talking about Yardi Matrix at the time and bringing
Yeah.
it to,
Pierce Island.
yeah, it was Pierce Island at the time. It's funny. I just talked to Ron Brock last week.
Really? I'd love to speak with him if you could
Yeah.
connect us.
Well, he'll be an NMHC.
Okay.
So let's connect when we're out there.
For sure. Yeah.
It's a cool cat.
You can make fun of my stash stance again.
Love
You're
it.
doing the stash stance right now.
It's a comfortable stance, man. Kick the arm back.
It's good. All
But
right.
yeah, so back to the condo craze days, because I don't even remember when you started. I know that you were, I thought you
So
were
I started I got my first license in California in 08. And
Okay.
I joined SVN like in 2009, I think.
Okay. You had missed the condo craze,
Yeah, I got to the party right as it was over and the hangover was
dying.
starting to set in.
Yeah.
And I was like, hey guys, I'm here. And everyone was like, nah, we're not doing anything. Get out of here, kid.
It's like Teen Wolf, the guy that you bring the keg to the party and they're like, put it with a 30 over there.
Right. Yeah.
Actually, look, I'm talking to a lot of younger brokers in this market. And to me, '08 was a great time to start. Like right now is a great time to start. You don't want to start your career in the middle of a hot market when the seniors in your office or any kind of a mentor is so inundated with deal maintenance, they can't really help you. And
Yeah.
you're sitting there thinking that you're missing all these deals. This is the best time to get in when it's dead and everybody, there's not a mass exodus of brokers right now, but I'm seeing people leaving.
It's a thinning of the herd, which I think is a good thing because I don't know about you, but I feel like the market generally has been over brokered. There's too many people trying to make deals, and it's
no doubt. And especially when you get really unsophisticated brokers coming in and valuing prices of deals that you're pitching for,
yeah.
and then
This guy said he could get me,
2 million more than you're saying. Say, okay.
How? Show me how.
Yeah. And unfortunately, or whatever, that's what we've been doing. That's what we did a lot through 2023 was owners would tell us, this is the price I need. And rather than say, there's no way you're hitting it, we would just say, hey, do you have time to meet? Or if you're in a different state, do you want to get on a Zoom call? Let me show you where your $15 million number hits on the metrics. And then we'd start the conversation saying, look, Bill, I'm giving you 70,000 of NOI. I'm just adding it. Let's just add it on because I don't want to get into an argument about my expenses are higher or my income is lower. I'm giving you 70K. And is this more than your? Yes, it is. And then say, all right, now at 15 million, here your debt service coverage ratio is 0.8 and your cash on cash is 0.66. And then I just sit there. And then I just had one a couple of weeks ago where the guy's looking at it and he's going, nobody's going to pay 15 million. That's right. And then he said they would if interest rates go to 3 or if I can get my NOI up 200. So it's yes.
Sure. So, yeah. Then you can play that scenario of what if you did this? What if you did that? But yeah, it's been a challenge. Yeah, no. So I feel like we do the same thing is every set of financials that we get in, we run it through our cash flow analysis to make sure that we're speaking the same language as the prospective client. Are their pricing expectations real? Can we see a path to 15 or 20 or 18, whatever their number is? Like, can we get there? Is there, do you have to grow year one income by 25%, 30%?
Yep.
Like, can you actually do that? Yeah, it's been a challenge for sure. But I feel if you're consultative, that I don't know, the good guy will win eventually. Maybe not.
I, I look, I agree with you. In a rapidly increasing market where the values are increasing because the debt's shrinking or the cost of capital shrinking or whatever it is, where it's rapidly increasing, you can say, hey, to Mr. and Mrs. Seller, look, I don't think your property is worth this amount. If you were trying to get $2 million more, who knows? Who knows? It's a crazy market. Debt's cheap. Let's try. Let's just try. We'll try to put
Right.
that whisper out there. In a market like this, where we had 11 Fed interest rate hikes and everybody's tightening and pulling back, and deal volume was down last year 63 to 73%, depending on what market you're in. You don't want to, if you overprice it and you miss a 2-month period, you could be out of luck. So it's, if you're looking for that, if you really desire to sell or have to sell or need to sell, you need to make sure you're pricing it at a level that a lender is going to lend on it in this market. And so that this market is, it's almost more important to price things both as a broker to not waste time.
Yeah.
We wasted time on a couple deals that we listed before all the rate hikes started coming in. And then also as a seller, you don't want to miss that window. You don't want to have a whisper price that's $3 million above what you're willing to take just because you're trying to get that top price or squeeze it out, or another broker told you could hit that. So you could lose out. Back to the condo, if you want to talk about the condo craze. So what you missed out on was the fact that, which helped me, because I had no clue. I didn't have a business background. I didn't have a financial background, but I had it was the coolest thing in the world at the time, which was a laser tape measure. So all the guys that I talked to cared about was how big are the units, and what can I take the 5-room 2-bedroom units and make it a 5-room 3-bedroom unit? Can I take the 4-room 1-bedrooms that have the big dining rooms? Is there a way that I can make that a bedroom? Because my condo price on the back end is higher. So all I would do is I would go into the unit, because most of the time it was a mom and pop owner.
Yeah.
And a lot of the time they didn't want to notify any of their tenants. They were all so trepidatious
Scared.
about having somebody know that they were potentially selling because they owned it for 30 years.
Right.
So I would go into a vacant unit and I would just laser measure. Okay. And then I would draw it out. And in one instance, I'll never forget it. It was on Spalding in Chicago, the street. And we went in and the owner didn't want to show us one unit because it was fully occupied. It was, I don't know if it was like a 12 or I think it was a 12 unit. And so I went down with the condo converter into the basement. It was a 1920s corner walk up in Chicago. We went in the basement and she was saying, okay, here's the firewalls. So here's about where the living room is. Here's where the bathroom is, because we can see the soil stack, and here laid out the unit in the basement.
Yeah.
I went back out to my car. The guy's like, all right, let's write up the contract. Because I would carry form contracts with me.
Yeah.
So we wrote it up and I brought it back in and handed it to her. And then she took it and said, okay, this is perfect. I got to bring it to so we were writing contracts on the hood of our car, having them go in, and we were making deals that way. And it was unbelievable.
Yeah, that's amazing.
What was happening in those days. And
the good old days.
Yeah, it was fun. It was fun.
For sure. It sounds like it was a good time. Yeah. It's a grind sometimes.
Yeah.
Brokerage is like a fickle mistress. There's just enough to keep you hanging around.
That's true. This is as close as I get to a fickle mistress.
Me too. So that's how you started your career, was form contracts on the hood of your car, basically, and the power of imagination in the basement. I'm curious. How has your career evolved? How have things, from your perspective, how have they changed now versus then?
Oh man, dramatically, right? Before, when I started my career, I was just talking to somebody in Colorado this afternoon about this, because she's getting into commercial real estate in Colorado. I was explaining I was the youngest by about 25 years in my office. They were all dinosaurs. Our OMs were it was one sheet of paper. It had the address, the income with a 5% vacancy, like 12 expense line items, the price, and my information. That was my OM. When I first saw like these other firms put out packages with pictures that they took
Yeah.
and went and had developed, I was like, wow, look at how amazing these people are putting these
Right.
packages together. I would drive up and down. So I took these zip code maps in Chicago, and I just would start in zip codes, and I would highlight as I would drive up and down these streets in a zip code in Chicago, and I would take pictures of every one of the apartment buildings, the corner walk-ups and the courtyard buildings, and then the mid and the mid rises. I didn't really go much above 60 units in Chicago at that time. And then I would, at that time, it was, I don't know if you remember these days, my camera would only hold 99 photos. So I could only take 99 pictures, and I would take a picture of the building. I would take a
Yep.
picture. And in Chicago, you had to have either the owner information or the management information on the side of the building. So I would take a picture of that, the address, and then a picture of the building. So I'd take 3 pictures for each property. So I could only get 30 or so buildings.
Right.
And I do that on a Saturday. So now we have CoStar and Yardi Matrix and Real Capital Analytics and Needle.
Yep.
So we have all of these things that we can just sit here. It doesn't replace standing there and seeing the graffiti in the building or
Sure.
seeing the development across the street. Even Google Maps doesn't do that, but you can gather so much more information and just get a database up and running, and then go do all of that stuff that you had to start with back in the day.
Right. There,
Big
yeah, there was
difference.
a high barrier to entry. I
And
remember
that's which I liked about it.
yeah.
If you were willing to do that kind of work, nobody else was doing it. And then all you had to do was I had 3 ring binders with these sheets that I would have to print out from the Cook County Treasury office here. It was dumb, but
Back in my day. Yeah, no, I used to do the same thing. I would spend my weekends walking the neighborhoods or driving buildings, and you take a picture outside and then I would put it on a letter and do a
yeah,
mail merge.
yeah,
And like I had a whole system figured out of how to do it. And but what's interesting, so I've actually recently gone back to some of that, calling on, so using some of the platforms out there, upcoming maturities or deals on like the lender watch list. I'll go there and I'll take a picture of the property, and it's almost like it's not the best picture.
yeah,
Like my rear view mirror will be in the picture, or the hood of my car, but that's
yeah,
on purpose. So I actually went there.
yeah,
Like,
yeah. This isn't a Google. Yeah,
this isn't from CoStar, it's me. And oh, by the way, your dumpster is overflowing
yep,
and looks like you have some potholes. Maybe I just caught you on the day that trash day and they haven't gotten there yet. But
yeah.
by the way, you're on the watch list. What are you doing?
That call immediately adds more value
I
to the
think
owner
so.
than, hey,
I
do you want to sell 123 Main? Would you look at an offer? I have an exchange buy. That was like the coolest opening statement that we did in the early 2000s. Hey, we have an exchange buyer.
yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, and I still hear people doing that now.
Honestly, it's still the best hook. Like,
It is, because everybody's like, overpay, 20% overpayer with a timeline constraint. They have to name my property in 45 days.
so yeah, I don't like calling Wolf when it's not actually there. But fortunately, we've had enough exchange buyers that we're working with where it's like, when we're putting it out there, I'm not lying to you.
No. The thing is, when you're talking to as many owners and operators and sellers and buyers that you talk to, of course you have 2 or 3 exchange buyers that are reaching out at
Yeah.
any given time saying, hey, what do you have? I have 25 more days to name.
Hmm.
And it's a great reason to reach out. I still think you need to add some kind of value to the person, because as percent of the time we call somebody, they're not going to do anything,
Yeah.
which is another barrier to entry to the brokerage community. I was just having a conversation today with somebody that we've had people with PhDs and MBAs try to get into brokerage thinking they're the smartest person in the room, which they probably are.
Yeah.
They can't handle 99 out of 100 calls being no,
Yeah,
and then they don't. It's hard to imagine that 1% yes makes careers.
that's what
You
it
know,
is.
I
It's
mean,
I
if
live
that,
by the mantra of the harder I work, the luckier I get. I'm sure
yeah,
you do as well.
yeah, yeah. We're not rocket scientists.
No, we're
If
not.
anybody recorded our conversations at any of the conferences we've hung out at, they would realize that quickly.
Yeah. Maybe
So
guys like Bob Knackle, but he's a special sort of guy, I
that's
guess.
true. That's true.
Yeah. Interesting. So on your call metrics, for the longest time, I lived by 50 conversations a week, 10 a day. And back to your, sometimes it would take 150 calls a day to hit that 10 conversations. Do you, did you track your calls or what were the metrics that you were looking at?
I never tracked my calls until I hired a coach.
Uh-huh.
And actually, David was my coach too.
Yeah.
I never tracked them until that. And then when I started tracking them, it seemed very pitiful. Once I started tracking and utilizing, I call it the bubble sheet, which is that cheat sheet with the circles.
Yeah.
It became like a game. And if I didn't fill that sheet up each week, I felt like I failed that week. And
Mm,
it
I like
was
that.
it was almost triple what I used to do. And that's another reason why, anybody in business, in real estate, really, I don't know, any industry needs to hire a coach if they don't have a mentor that is a fantastic mentor. Because what I realized, especially with the calls, because every other week or whatever we had the calls, you go to the metrics and you look at them. And then I was putting in, here's how many dials I'm making, here's how many connections, and then here's how many hours a week. And then I just never forget. Every week he's like, how are you doing this many hours and you're only hitting this many dials? And then I finally took, wait a minute, let's go through it. Go take me through the process. Right. And I would be like, I go to my database, I look up stash, I'd see how many buildings he has, I'd look at his buildings, I'd go into all of the build, see which ones had mortgages that were coming due, see what other states that he was in, look at his website. And he's like, yeah, then you get a voicemail, right? Yeah. So you just spent 10 minutes doing all of that.
Yeah.
And so and that's all you're looking for, right? When you hire a coach, you're looking for like a 1 or 2% trajectory change.
It's the
If you
little
can,
things.
yeah, if you can get that and you stay committed to it, not many people have numbers like you as far as dials, but
Yeah. I've fallen off a little bit, which I probably should get back to it, but
yeah,
we're trying to use more tools like mail merges and things like that, trying to be smarter, trying to
yeah.
use Needle to track not only prospecting efforts, but deals in the pipeline and where they're at, financials being sent or not, and pricing, things like that.
And you're bringing up needle, and I've been fortunate enough. I haven't used it as much as I should, but been fortunate enough to do the beta testing on that.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. So I just took the hot leads ones that were in Needle and
Yeah.
I put them into a list and I just started really talking to the owners that I knew. So I could it was like hey, I was checking in with them. A crazy thing, I'm using this AI tool. It's a predictive analytics tool. And your property at 1033, whatever, popped up. I'm just curious I'm testing the system. What do you know? Is there any validity to the fact that this is showing up as a potential property that could be sold?
Yeah.
Because I knew it because I think it was like a point 7 debt coverage or something like that. So it was like way off.
Yeah.
And he said, yeah, he goes, I'm not surprised it's on a list like that because we way overpaid for this because we own the property and the backside of it. And we're trying to combine operations and it hasn't been as successful as we thought. So I can see why I'm not ready to give it up yet, but that was like the first call. And I
That's
was like,
great.
holy crap, there could be something because like you said, I don't want to go through a list of 1,000 properties to try to uncover one potential. If I can get that 1,000 down to
Yeah.
100, start with the low hanging fruit, then go back to the 900. That if the low hanging fruit doesn't produce anything, that's what we're
Right.
looking for.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean so that was the original idea when I was walking. I remember I had parked my car and I was walking the block it took to get to my office. And I had just had a call with somebody and they're like, we're not doing anything. And I see a listing pop up with a competitor or something. And I'm like,
Yeah.
there's so much data out there. There's rental rates and Pierce Island, like we
Yeah.
mentioned, rental rates, occupancies, even ownership behavior patterns. And I can see all this stuff in reverse. I just don't know what to do with it forward looking. So that was really the genesis of how we got here. And I was working on it a little bit before this. We've joined a startup accelerator called GrowthX and going through their program, and it's really tearing everything down to the basics so that you can get really, I would almost like to do it for brokerage as well, a brokerage business, because the things that it's looking at are the same for any sales business. So it just happens to be for sales based organizations. So tech
Yeah.
companies in this case, but yeah,
And so that was Illinois. So there were a ton that popped up right in Illinois. So I started there. And then to give you another example, which as I'm giving you two examples that happened immediately, which is why I'm almost embarrassed I'm not using it every day. The second one, I met with a younger team that left an acquisition firm. They're starting their own fund and they wanted to target South Dakota. So I said, let me look at Needle.
yeah,
Brought Needle up in South Dakota. South Dakota does not have that many apartment buildings to begin with. So,
right,
but it brought up, I think, 18 buildings. Of those 18 buildings, there might have been 8 owners, right? Because there were a couple that were from the same owner. And so I got it down. I said, hey, look, and I screen shared it with these guys. I'm calling them kids because they're probably in their late 20s. And I said, okay, here's 9 companies. And they said, we have an LOI on that company's. We are negotiating a contract with this company. And then they said, and we're meeting next week. We're going out to South Dakota to meet with this other company. So of the 9 companies, they already were working with 3 of them.
that's amazing. Wow.
It was amazing. I don't know if I should promote it because I don't want other brokers to have this stuff.
I did not pay you for this.
That's right. So I should have some profit sharing in Needle.
Yeah, we'll talk offline. We'll figure something out.
But yeah, it's I don't even know how I got, like, how old is it so far? Because I
I
just
mean,
found out about it a few months before, maybe in the summer.
yeah, that's when we gave the green light to start talking to people about it. But so I was thinking on the idea back when 20. Did you ever use RealHound?
I did not.
That was the CRM I used, and I thought it was great, but then they just stopped supporting it. And so like when that started to fall apart, I think that's probably about the time that I was like, man, what if you could do this? And then it took a while because it's been a side hustle for everybody, educate our data scientists. And what we first started doing was spitting out, and I kept it within Capstone, but I had similar experiences. So like we would spit out like 20 leads. And in Cincinnati, I remember I was like, we're listing that one. That one's under contract. That one's listed with a competitor, like
Yeah.
7 of them, 7 of the 20. And I was like, oh my God, we're onto something.
Yeah.
And so once we had that, our initial thought was, and we can still offer this, but we've pivoted. If you have your own data set, we can work from that and apply the formula, and then get those leads for you. But I have the most important protective data ever imagined. So hands off sort of thing. So it's like, all right, we're going to have to go out and source the data individually on our own and then just sell the leads in that way on a subscription basis. So that's what's taken us a while. And I would imagine that those 3-ring binders that you had from Cook County Auditor, what we have found is that sometimes you'll have I bet that 100 unit that you talked about at the beginning, that was probably two parcels, right?
Yeah.
We're trying to figure out, okay, if it's two parcels like that, how do you tie those two together? Is it the ownership entity? Is it the loan? Is it the sale date? But then sometimes, like you said, the guy said, oh, we own the one behind it and we're trying to combine operations with it. There's a lot more to it than meets the eye, but
Yeah.
we're getting there. I think we're on the verge of being able to start actually selling it and monetizing, and I'm excited for that.
Yeah. I think you even mentioned some kind of metric when you look back in previous years.
Yeah, so on just the very basic algorithm in 2021 we were 40, I think 44% accurate, and then in 2022 we were 47% accurate. So what that means is that if we had 100 property, if we predicted 100 properties, that 44 would have traded. And then the next year, if we predicted 100 properties, if we labeled them hot, for instance, then 47 traded. And there's,
You're looking and with predictive analytics, you're looking for, I would imagine if you were anywhere near 20%, people are buying it.
because otherwise your choice is, okay, there's 1,000 properties in the market. I
Right.
got to call every single one of those owners. And the thing is, I'm sure you've experienced this. When you call an owner who owns 20 properties, hey, Jeff, are you selling any of them? No. Hey, Jeff, are you selling Stone Creek? Actually, I might be considering it. Yeah.
Right.
And it's the same guy. It's a 1% change in your conversation,
Yeah.
and it's just how you approach them. Yeah, I've been honest with people when I'm testing it as well, when I'm doing my prospecting out of there. Hey, this is a new prospecting system. It has identified whatever property as a potential sale candidate. What are your plans for the property?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm curious, how long have you been coaching?
I think I'm going on to my third year.
How do you like it?
I enjoy it. It's interesting because I was also sharing this today on another conversation with somebody that's thinking of getting, they saw that I coach brokers and they said, why should I do this? I was explaining to her that the interesting thing part about it is I was probably like many of the typical, actually, I know a lot of the people I've coached, I was probably typical or worse than the ones I coached, where I was like, I wouldn't time block the time to do the work. So I'm always doing it like the night before or right before the call. And I didn't realize that my coach at the time could see when I submitted it, the link. So I was thinking I was be like, get on the call. No, I sent it in. Like my dog ate the homework, but I found it
Yeah.
kind of thing. And so I didn't put all my effort into doing it. So and I was always like, I'm going to go back. I'm going to go back and do each module. And really, you never have time to do that. And
Yeah.
then my coach said, actually, you'd be a good coach for this just from our conversations. And then I knew a couple of the other people at the company, Mike and everybody, and they just said,
Hmm.
hey, let's do it. It'd be awesome to, you'll learn your craft better once you teach it.
Yeah.
And there's no doubt. There's no doubt because as I've gone back and taken a dozen people through every one of the modules, I'm like, oh, that's what I was supposed to learn out of this. I finally get it. And so you learn it a lot better. And then the other thing is it turns something on where if you're not doing this stuff that you're coaching these people to do, because they ask you, so how do you do this?
Yeah.
I realized that early on with my first member coaching them. I was like, I'm going to be asked this. So now so I have to implement the things that I'm coaching, and it just made my practice a lot better.
That's
So
great.
I enjoy it, and I enjoy like seeing the aha moments that I saw, the 1% things that I wish I would have known,
Yeah.
especially to the new to business brokers around the country. And look, I like being a part of that community too, because there are things that come up. I learned from all the other people within the community, things that I'm like, I never even thought of that angle. I never even thought to use AI. I never thought to do that. It's not even something I would have considered.
That's interesting. Yeah, no, I was part of it earlier on in my career. Then I got to a point where I just felt like I wasn't I had a lot going on. I
Yeah.
think I dropped it when we transitioned over to Capstone or shortly thereafter. Because I
Yeah.
was trying to learn like a new company and I had the team and we were working through some things that way. And I was just like, I don't have the bandwidth. But I think it's a great thing. And I attribute the coaching to really helping me stay in the business. I figured out my call counts. Like it was Gary, who's no longer with us. If you got your CCIM, he's the one that built the initial discounted cash flow.
Yeah.
And it was 50 conversations a week and two new business appointments a week. And if you can do those things, you're going to be all right.
Yeah.
But, and I felt I could, even if I got kicked in the teeth, all right, I got my calls in, I can go home and come and try and conquer it again tomorrow.
Yeah. And 10 conversations is a lot. It seems very simple when you
Yeah.
say all you got to do is go to work and talk to 10 people. If somebody told you that, you're like, hey, you can make $1 million
Yeah.
if you just talk to 10 people a day, 5 days a week. You'd be like,
Easy. No
no big deal.
problem.
There was one thing I remember. I don't know if we were at that conference in LA where you had to go back to your hotel room because I think at the time you were trying to get 8. Was there ever a number that you said I need to get 8 a day?
No, it was
Always 10. Okay. There's somebody else that said 8, and it's 8 seems like a lot easier number to hit than 10, but that's still 40 a week.
yeah.
And then so now you're talking about 160 conversations a month.
Yeah.
If you have 160 conversations a month, there's no way you're not going to get in the middle of something, because on those conversations, it always leads you in a different direction than you thought. They're like, I'm not doing this, but I have this other one that I have a 20% vacancy, because I'm always like, give me your dog first. If I don't know the person, give me your crappiest property, the one that makes you like pissed that you're in real estate to begin with.
Yeah.
Let me underwrite it and see what we can do. If all else fails, I can give you information as to what you can do to make it a better, income producing property for you at the very
Sure.
least.
Well,
So
that's that consultative approach, like we talked about. Yeah. That's interesting. How do you, how have you overcome or have you been able to overcome? Oh, so and so sold it to me. I got to sell it back through them. Is that a burden you face or a
oh,
objection?
absolutely, absolutely, and it's one that I can appreciate.
Yeah.
And I'll say, hey, Bill, I can appreciate that because that's all I'm trying to build with all of my clients when I sell them a deal. And then from there, I'm just saying, hey, I'm happy to give you a second opinion, knowing that you're going to go with this other person. I'm always happy to be second husband on a real estate transaction. I'm always happy to be second choice for you because frankly, I'll also look at the age of the person that they're saying, this is my guy or gal as a
Yeah.
broker. And if we're up in years, I'm like, look, I don't know if he or she is going to be doing this much longer. Let me give you the second opinion until they decide to start buying their own deals, or God forbid something happens to them and they're no longer going to be able to service your needs.
Yeah.
I'm happy to come in a second. So
That's fair. And
I switch it to that, but
have you won deals that way?
yes.
That's awesome.
Yeah. I
Is it?
mean, there's a recent deal that we won where we were one of 5 brokerage firms that pitched on it. I used the perfect pitch scenario with them. And then I also used a lot of our data because it was not a stabilized asset. So I used a lot of the data like Yardi Matrix, where they gave us within a 2-mile radius. There's a 1 or 3 mile radius actually around the property, right? Where you utilize the metrics of everybody that's on the Yardi Voyager software, drop it down into here's where 5 or 6 deals right around you are running currently with live data. We utilized that, which was a different thing that nobody else brought to the table. And then
Wow.
we had also we'd sold them another deal and actually invested with them on another transaction. So we had a little bit of a leg up than the guy that sold them the deal. But yeah, and as far as, yeah, we have been successful in other realms. Because the other thing is, even if somebody is saying, I'm going There was another transaction in Texas that we actually invested with the owner, and he said, I have to give it to this group that gave me the deal. I
Hmm.
said, no problem, because I knew it was such a hairy, crazy deal. And I also knew who the owner was, that he's not the most easy person to deal with. And I've closed 10 transactions with him, but so I know how he operates. I know he's going to call me at 6:30 on Friday and expect me to answer my phone. Otherwise, I'm going to get 4 different calls, and then they progressively get more aggressive. It happened
Right.
to me on the first deal. So I know what to, so I knew how to, so I knew the other guys weren't going to want to list it, even though he said, I have to give it to them. So I still gave him, here's the full blown proposal. Here's what I think we can do. We're not looking for a needle in a haystack. We're looking for a needle in a needle stack kind of person. So if they can do it, I can appreciate that. But here's what I think we can do. And we invested with you on this deal. So what do you think? So
Do you invest with clients a lot in deals?
we even, it's funny because we initially started investing in the deals where the buyer, we're trying to talk up the property to the buyer, and then the buyer saying, we get it down to the one guy that we think that is above and beyond everybody else, and we're talking it up, and they're saying, hey, why don't you put your money where your mouth is? If you really believe in this transaction, why don't you throw your fee into it? And then of course we have to make sure, you have to ask the seller, say, hey, I am representing you, but these guys are now at a point where they're saying the only way they're doing this deal is if I throw the fee in. Do you have any problems with it? If you do, I'm not doing it. They might not buy it, but I'm going to tell them I believe in this deal. Do you have a problem? So I always ask that. Everybody has to understand that on both sides. That's how we got involved in the first deal. It was a 144 unit deal where the buyer lost his main investor, and
Oh,
he died after their holiday party. And
oh my gosh.
yeah, it's crazy. And so look, I don't have enough funds. I have to back out. I said, look, I think with the way you operate deals, and I'll never forget the deal because it was 18 buildings, it was 144 units. And the one building, the guy actually tried to condo convert in the condo craze days, but it was a soft market that was in a tertiary market. And his attempt to condo convert was, I'm changing the white appliances to black appliances. I'm putting a Formica countertop on, and I'm going to change out the hardware. And
Yeah.
then and I said, okay. And then but nobody was willing to buy a condo in this market when they could buy a house for the same price. I said, okay. And then so I put him back on the rent roll. And I noticed they were $150 higher than all the 17 other buildings. How much did you put into these units? He said, I don't know, about 3,000, 3,300.
That's a
So
light
then I said to the
renovation.
buyer, yeah, I said, look, it's done. It's proven. This is proven.
Yeah.
3,300 a unit gets you $150.
That's a great ROI.
Dude. And so then I said, look, all you have to do is the same thing for the rest of the 17 unit buildings. You just added about, I don't know, $1.5 million, 2 million in value
Like that.
with $300,000 of. So then he's, look, and it was interesting because once I said, look, we'll help you raise the money. And we just did it with a couple people. And even at the time, it was my mom. My grandfather had passed, and she had a couple shekels that she inherited from him.
Yeah.
I said, I'll bring my mom's money into it. And that even got, and so the guy, so he went from, when we did the inspections, look at this, look at this, look at the floors are bouncy. Look at this. I said, I'll never forget. I said, Harry, if you think this is a bad deal, I'm out. We're out. Let's say, no, it's not, it was like a different conversation, right?
Yeah.
It was not now the broker just trying to get a fee. It was me as a partner with this guy. So
That's a lesson I wish somebody would have told me, or I would have learned much earlier in my career, is to throw in on deals. But you have to make sure that you find, I don't know about you, but I've had happen to me too many times where you invest a lot of time and resources into a relationship, and then the person just ends up being a scoundrel, or
yeah.
I guess that just is what it is. That's just sales.
Yeah. And the other thing is, from the brokerage perspective, you don't want to get, because we have a couple in our market that they buy a lot of deals,
Uh-huh.
and you don't want to get the perception in the market that if you're bringing a deal to market, it's one you passed on. So that's why I don't buy deals on my own. I only would come in with deals that I believe in, either outside of my market with owners that I trust,
Yeah.
or if it's in my market, it has to be a specific deal that I I was asked to come into, basically like that.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Because you don't want to get the reputation, because there are a couple guys here in Chicago that they have that reputation that they're brokers, and everybody's what's wrong with the property if you're putting it on LoopNet or Crexy? What's wrong with it?
Right.
Why didn't you buy it?
Right.
So
Yeah, that's true. All right. You're the national chair, council chair of multifamily for SVN. Did I say it right? Is that the
yep.
right? So being that you say oversee multifamily for the whole country, do you have a particular market that you specialize in?
Yeah, and oversee is it's a strong descriptive word about what I do as the national council chair.
You lead it, maybe.
Yeah. I do the national multifamily call, and we
Yeah.
used to do it every month when you were on board. I did it every month, and it was like, because it takes about 5 or 6 hours to get everything prepared and the slides and all that. And so that was just getting way too much. And then they switched us to quarterly, which is a lot easier. It's more palatable. So I just did it last week. But what that does for me is it forces me to learn markets outside of mine. I'm here in Chicago.
Yep.
I work Midwestern markets predominantly. Illinois, Indiana, Wisconsin, and Iowa is where we track every single deal that exists, 50 units and above. Obviously, we can work on a number of different other states. So what the position has done for me is I run the breakout sessions at the national conferences for the multifamily group. I'm face forward to a lot of the advisors. We have a little over 220 offices around the country, and a lot of them are secondary and tertiary markets where it might be a 2 or 3 person team that is a jack of all trades, but they know the owner of the 200 unit deal, right? Their kid goes to school with their kid, or they go to the same church, or whatever it is. They just don't feel comfortable underwriting, marketing, and putting the package together for a 150 unit or 200 unit deal in their market. Montgomery, Alabama is one example right now. We've sold a number of deals there with another SVN partner that he knows the market. He says, I porch swing with everybody down here. I was like, what the hell's porch swing mean? I sit on the front porch and I can talk to him. I was like, okay. And so we have a great partnership with him. He just basically gets the foot in the door, because multifamily is the same all over the country. You just need to understand the local nuances. If you're in
Right.
whatever, like North Carolina, you have to understand the polybutyl piping issues that come up. If you're in certain areas, you just have to understand the specific niches. And obviously, if you're down in the Florida markets or tech, you have to understand that now your insurance is
It's
2,000
$4,000
a
a
unit,
unit. Yeah.
whatever it is. Just in Miami, talking to somebody, and they said it was like 3,500 a unit. So they're all starting to self-insure. I mean, that number, when it's getting up to 550 a unit here in the Midwest, I just
You-
posted something like, is anybody getting renewals that are less than 500, 550 a unit?
I don't know about you, but I remember when I first started, it was 250 a unit, and that was
Exactly.
yeah.
That's because we have all the metrics of price per unit that if something pops up, it turns red, and it started getting above that. We were at 350 for a while.
Yeah.
Now it's 550 is like the best case scenario. So as long as you understand the nuances, you can work a deal in any part of the country. It's just that's what we've enjoyed. So we utilize our team here in Chicago. We partner up with whoever needs us in whatever capacity they need us.
Hmm.
They typically do all the boots on the ground, the showings, they're there for all the inspections. They're the eyes and ears for the seller.
Yep.
And then we oftentimes will bring in the buyer and we'll run the process from a marketing standpoint, underwriting standpoint. I think we've done deals in 9 or 10 different states in the last couple of years with colleagues, and it's been fun. I'm learning different markets from El Paso to Syracuse to Durham, the Dakotas. We're all over the place with that.
That's awesome. That's
Yeah.
great. I bet you didn't think that's what was going to happen when you first started, did you?
I didn't think I was leaving 2 different zip codes in Chicago. I didn't want to, because once I started getting a 45 minutes, an hour, we're selling deals that we're driving 3.5 hours to go to. Then it becomes like you have to stack your day when you're doing
Yeah.
that. And we've done the whole let's hire a retired limo driver kind of thing. I got that from Bo Beery, where I've hired people where they're driving me down to the inspections, and I can do work for that 3-hour drive there and 3-hour drive back. So you don't get back at 9 o'clock at night and you have 3 hours of emails to
Oh,
respond.
and you're exhausted. Yeah.
Yeah.
Being on the road is exhausting.
It is. It is. But it's
Yeah.
part,
Whether
it's part of what we do. So that's why I thought this is great. I'm never leaving Chicago. Like the longest drive I'll ever have is to the other side of the city. We were selling in some areas that were very management intense in Chicago, which was interesting because at that time, so I had a black sedan and I always donate to the police memorial fund. So I get the police stickers or like plates.
Yeah.
I have the trench coat. So most of the time when I'd go into areas that were management intensive areas, they thought I was a police officer. Back then, they actually respected police. Now I wouldn't be trying to look like one going into these markets.
Take a different tact. Yeah.
Yeah, I look like an insurance agent. I've done that too. Where there was one deal I'll never forget on the west
You have
side.
a State Farm polo or something?
I need to get one of those. I just khaki pants, like
Yeah.
I'm Jake. I need to do that because there was one deal that I was showing at 11 o'clock in the morning, and there was a whole crew of guys out on the front porch. There were probably eight guys hanging, and they weren't tenants of the building.
Yeah.
Right. And they weren't Cutco knife salesmen going to that building either. So they were hanging strong. And I
They
was
were there
like,
to work, but
yeah,
not selling knives.
right. They were selling things. It wasn't knives. But I'll never forget, like I'm sitting there, and this was early in my career. And I was like, holy cow, I have a prospective buyer coming to look at this. If they see this going on out in the front, I might as well not be here. So what I did was I had a trench coat. I got out with my camera, my camera that could take 90 pictures or whatever it was. I said, you guys you're free to stay in front of this building. I'm here for insurance purposes. I have to take pictures of the rooftop here from the ground. You're free to stay. When you tell people like that are doing suspect things, they're like, no, man, no, thank you. And they're like covering themselves as they're leaving. So they cleared out, showed the building.
As long as you were there. Yeah.
Right. So there's all sorts of different fun tactics.
That's genius. I've never done that, but I like that. If I ever have to do that,
what are you going to say? Can you guys please move off the steps? Yeah, that would work.
Yeah.
I'm 26 years old, but when you bring that camera out, that helps.
That's great. Awesome. Yeah. On that note, how can people get in touch with you if they want to be in touch with you?
I'll give you my cell number. I don't know if you put it in the show notes. My cell number is 773-251-7342. You can find me on LinkedIn or Twitter. I'm there daily. Find me.
And your hashtag is, what is it?
Multifamily Readout.
Yeah, that's genius. I love it.
There were too many multifamily minutes, so I had to cancel doing those.
That's all right. I think it's better this way.
All right, cool.
Awesome. Reid, thank you so much, my friend, and have a great rest of your day.
All right, Stash, you too. Great
all
talking.
Right.